what is the best alternate player's handbook for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons? If you're like me, you have played a lot of 5th edition D&D, and there's a lot of things you like about it. I mean, there are a few things that I'd like to change. We've talked about that on the channel, but there are some things that you like, but hey, it's time for something new, it's time for something fresh. I'd really like to be able to dig into something else. So I was very excited when I found the World of Aetaltis and its player's guide. There's a lot of material out there for the World of Aetaltis, but I have really been enjoying getting into this book. And of course, I've talked with Mark Tassin on the channel as part of the tabletop. You can find our interview here on the channel. The creator of this world, and what he was trying to do was take all of the kinds of things that we love about, let's say, classic fantasy, especially classic tabletop fantasy, but yet reimagine it in a new and fresh way. And I've got to say, as I've been going through this player's handbook, I really think that he's succeeded. Now, one thing that I really like about this is the magic system, the alternate arcane magic system, but I put that in a whole different video. So if you want to check out an alternate arcane magic system that I happen to really like and think maybe I might want to adopt for my 5th edition games, just in general, well, check out that video and what's going on here in the player's handbook. But also, when I'm just talking about creating characters and trying to play out of a handbook, I am really liking what I see here in the World of Aetaltis. So what I want to do is go down here, and of course there's a lot that we could talk about. This is the player's guide, which is everything a player needs to create a character and play a character in the World of Aetaltis, but I think it is totally generalizable, even though I do really like this world. But I want to focus in this on character creation. We're looking at the table of contents right here, and we can see character creation, lineages, cultures, backgrounds, callings, classes, new callings, new backgrounds, all of this equipment, magic and spells, covered that in a different video. I specifically, though, want to talk about lineage and a little bit about culture, but mainly about the really cool lineage information in this book. So let's go there now. So here we are talking about lineages. And by the way, Mark went all out with the art in this book. It has absolutely got phenomenal art. As far as the production value of these books, with the layout, the art, all of that is just phenomenal. I really enjoy looking at the art that he was able to put together for the World of Aetaltis. But in this specifically, we are talking about lineages. And lineages are, in the Aetaltis player handbook, basically the equivalent of races. We're talking about something biological about you that is influencing something about your character. You know, there's a lot of discussion today about, you know, the use of the word race. Should we be using the word race? Personally, I don't mind using the word race in RPGs because I think that most people who play fantasy RPGs and are familiar with fantasy literature in general understand what we're trying to say when we say something like races. You know, we're talking about elves, dwarves, humans, you know, orcs. Those are the different races, you know, when we're talking about in the context of different fantasy games. Some people don't want to use that word, and that's fine, but the important part here is that we are distinguishing between the biological aspect in Aetaltis, lineage, and then also the cultural aspect, which is actually called culture here in Aetaltis. And I love the idea of distinguishing between those. We've talked about that on this channel before, and I think it's a great idea. It's how I would want to do it if I am creating my own RPG. And you know, actually, I even think that when I was working on the Theophany RPG, which is one of the worlds we're developing here on this channel, rather than using race, I think I had used lineage. So Mark and I may be on the same kind of wavelength here. When I was working on Theophany, being that it's dealing with angels and demons and things like that, race didn't seem exactly right, and also species didn't seem exactly right. So I think I had decided to use the word lineage as well. But you could use species or race. Probably in the context of the world of Rabavania, species will make more sense. But at any rate, the word that we're using here is not important. The concept is important, though. We're talking about here what makes your character unique or distinctive because of their biological characteristics. And so we've got some very classic kinds of lineages or races, whatever you want to call them, here in Aetaltis, but we also have some new stuff that I'm really excited about playing. I would love to play out of this player's handbook and try to play some of them. So we've got the classics are here, like dwarves and elves, but also new stuff like Drothmals and some other stuff that I really want to play. So let's just flip through this and take a look at the different lineages that you can play. And you know, also you can see here that we have returned to some of the really classic elements of character creation because of our biological characteristics that have been dropped from, for instance, 5th edition. Now, it's arguable whether or not you need them. All right. I mean, I'm open to those arguments. Do you really need to understand exactly how tall your character is, or their age, or their weight? Well, arguably, maybe not. But this is a part of classic tabletop fantasy role playing that has been brought back here into Aetaltis, and it made me smile when I saw it. It made me smile when I saw this part. So you've got the different lineages right here. Human, Chibat, Drothmal, Dwarf, Elf, Fairy, Sprite, Halfling, and so forth. And here's your height if you're male, and here's your height if you're female, and then here is your lineage's starting age. Roll that up for your first level character, and then also lineage weight according to male and female for all of these different lineages. And look at them across here. I mean, I love the art that has been produced for Aetaltis. I mean, it's just amazing. And when you look across here, I see things that I'm like, wait, what is that? I might want to play that I haven't seen in the standard 5th edition player's handbook. And so I think this is really neat. Like, what is this guy right here? This reptilian looking creature right here? Or this one right here? This like kind of gnome, not exactly, but fairy woodland kind of gnome person. And what is this alien looking thing over here? Man, I want to try this out. So I got really excited as I was looking at a lot of these. So let's go through here. Oh, and here we've got some more of them right here. We've got this may be the elf. I think this is the Drothmal. I think we'll check on that. That is something similar to the half-orc. This fairy right here, I'll talk about that in a moment because I'm really interested in that one. And then we also have this like a ogre-like creature here and this smaller creature here. So I was like, oh wait, what are these? Because I've played out of the 5th edition player's handbook, of course, for a lot, but I played out of the standard Dungeons & Dragons player's handbook as far as the races that it's offered for a long time. So I really appreciate what Mark was trying to do with Aetaltis here and trying to make something, but also make it new. Okay, so human. I think we can skip over human. Now, there are differences in Aetaltis and this player's handbook and stuff like that, but the Atlan, the human, okay, so you can play humans in this game as well. But I want to get on to the things that you can't play. So this is the Chibat. Take a look at this thing. I mean, that looks different. Chibats are 1.5 feet tall and weigh about 50 pounds. They have exaggerated facial features. Their pointed ears are large, almost floppy, and covered with fine hair on the outsides. Body hair is heavy, more like fur than hair. The hair on their heads tends to poof out if not restrained. Their hair and eye colors tend toward shades of brown, and their skin ranges from pale tan to black. Chibats reach maturity at 13 and live to be about 80 years old. That's kind of a cool looking thing. And we can take a look at like Chibat traits. We've got ability score modifiers, ability score requirements. And I think this is interesting too. If I'm reading this right, and I believe that I am, we've got ability score modifiers here, but there's no maximum strength that a Chibat, or no, minimum strength, excuse me. So we're looking at minimum and maximum. So this is also something that's returning here in the world of Aetaltis that we don't see in 5th edition. That, okay, if you're going to be a Chibat, for instance, we do have ability score requirements. There's no minimum, but there is a maximum. There's a minimum dex of 10, but no maximum. Charisma looks like a minimum of 10, and then a maximum of none. Size, ages, enhanced hearing, language mastery, lovable. Whether it's the way their ears fold over when they're disappointed, the unmistakable twinkle in their eye when they're happy, or just some undiscovered magical effect, people just like Chibats. You have an advantage when making charisma persuasion checks to improve the reactions of sentient non-Chibat targets. So here is the Drothmal. And again, fantastic art. I'm sure I'll say that multiple times. So this is the Drothmal. Drothmal stand 7 feet tall and weigh just over 300 pounds. Their faces have faintly feline appearance, giving them an animalistic air. Skin color ranges from deep tan to white to blue-gray. Drothmals have thick hair on their heads, and intricate patterns of spots mark their skin from their foreheads down to the smalls of their backs. Drothmals reach maturity at 10 and live to be about 50 years old. So that is the Drothmal. We got +2 strength, +2 charisma, and it looks like ability score requirements. We've got like a minimum strength of 10, but no maximum, a minimum constitution of 10. Moves 30 feet, medium. As far as endurance goes, Drothmals more easily resist the negative effects of fatigue, exhaustion, and other physical hardships. When making saving throws to avoid fatigue and exhaustion, as well as any other ill effects from running, forced marches, starvation, and thirst, you have advantages on the roll. Fearless. Drothmals fear feel fear, but not with the same intensity as other adventurers. You are immune to non-magical fear effects and have advantage on saving throws against magical fear effects. Ferocity. Drothmals may stay conscious and continue to fight even if their hit points drop below 1, as long as they are not instantly killed. Continue to make death saves as normal. Once combat is over, your fury subsides and you fall unconscious even if your hit points are now above 0 and you succeeded on 3 death saving throws. You still die upon 3 failed death saving throws, or if your negative hit points exceed your maximum hit points. Ice walking. Drothmals can traverse slippery surfaces with ease. You are adept at moving across icy surfaces, and you have advantages on checks to keep your footing while walking or climbing on icy or slippery surfaces. And then also Natural Explorer Arctic. Drothmals are deeply familiar with Arctic environments and are adept at traveling and surviving in such regions. When you make an intelligence or wisdom check related to your favored terrain, your proficiency bonus is doubled if you are using a skill that you are proficient in. Dwarf. Okay, here are dwarves, so classic kinds of dwarves, a bit reimagined dwarves, but classic dwarves present in this fantasy setting. So we've got ability score +2, strength +2, constitution, ability score requirements, minimum strength of 8, no max, dexterity, no minimum dexterity, but maximum dexterity of 16, con minimum 10, no max. So what makes dwarves different in this world? So dwarves, dark vision. Dwarves can see in total darkness. I think dwarves have dark vision in 5th edition. Can see in total darkness using a special type of vision. As a free action, you can shift your sight from normal sight to dark vision. When using dark vision, you can see in dim light and darkness within 60 feet as if it were bright light. When using dark vision, you can't discern color, only shades of gray. Wasn't that an AD&D thing? I think I remember that from Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Was that removed from 5th edition? You're going to have to remind me. Deep sense. When a dwarf is underground, they always know how far it is to the surface from where they are standing. Also, when they are underground, they have an innate sense of which direction is north. Encumbered movement. A dwarf's speed only drops by 5 feet when they are encumbered and 10 feet when they are heavily encumbered. Resilience. Dwarves are remarkably resistant to poison and disease. They have advantage when making saving throws against poison and disease. Stone sense. Dwarves have an instinctive understanding of stone. You can tell if stone is worked by simply touching it or if it looks unworked. In addition, you have advantage on checks to gauge the stability of stone structures and to find hidden doors, latches, or other devices made from stone. And now here we have the elf. So this is the Aetaltin equivalent of the elf. So what is going on with the elf here? So we have +2 dexterity, +1 charisma. Okay, you know, traditionally, I think in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, the elves had negative constitution, which was always controversial in my gaming group. We always thought they should have negative strength, I believe it was. I hope I'm saying that right. But we thought it should be negative strength. Although in other circumstances, like I didn't understand why the elves wouldn't be as healthy. But here we have +2 dex and +1 charisma. I'm actually fine with that, and not actually reducing either the constitution or the strength of the elves. I'm fine with strong elves, and I'm also fine with healthy elves. So ability score requirements: dex minimum of 12, no maximum, charisma minimum of 12. So what happens with this, with the elves? Ageless. Once they reach maturity, elves do not display physical signs of aging. You also do not suffer from negative or positive effects of aging on your ability scores after reaching maturity. Cantrip. The elven bond to magic manifests in innate magical abilities. You can naturally cast a cantrip of your choice from the wizard or sorcerer spell lists. No spell casting roll is required to cast the cantrip. Elven glamour. Elves can cast prestidigitation at will. No spell casting roll is required. That certainly lets you do things like the elves of Mirkwood did in The Hobbit, right? Yep, certainly would. Elven spell resistance. Elves easily resist spells that can control their minds. You have advantage on saving throws to resist being charmed, and you are immune to magical sleep effects. Meditative sleep. Elves have the natural ability to enter a deep, meditative state that can replace normal sleep. Using this technique, they can get the equivalent of a full night's rest in just 4 hours. I like that. Very classic. Starlight vision. As long as there are stars visible, elves can see as well at night as they can during full light of day. I like that incarnation of elves. I like this incarnation of elves. I really do. Now, I also really like this one. Fairy, believe it or not, I would really like to try playing a fairy in a game. I became kind of enamored with this concept when I was reading the GURPS Fantasy Folk book, and the GURPS Fantasy Folk book has the Elyllyn, it's ELLYN, Llon or something like that, the Elion, and they're basically fairies, but I enjoyed it because culturally they're very chivalric. They have the nobility and they have the knights, and they take themselves very seriously, and I thought, man, it would be really cool to play this Elion knight, basically a fairy knight, but I've never gotten to play that. Never had somebody running a GURPS game where I could break out that book and try playing the Elion. But then, so that's why I started to smile and my eyes opened really wide when I was looking at the player's handbook here in Aetaltis, and it had the fairy here. And I was like, oh my god, if I were playing out of this player's handbook, I would finally be able to try to play a fairy knight. It just seems like a really cool concept to me. You know, a warrior fairy who takes himself very seriously, but, you know, is very small and fairy-like. But he can fly. It seems like a really neat thing to try to play. So it says, fairies look strikingly similar to elves, except they are only 1.5 feet tall and weigh just over 5 pounds. In addition, fairies have fragile, iridescent wings protruding from near their shoulder blades. Their skin, hair, and eyes can be any color and any combination, although hues of hair and skin are often harmonious. Fairies reach maturity at an age of 15 and are known to live as long as 100 years. If I were playing out of this handbook, that's the first thing I would play. So here we've got fairy traits. Ability score modifiers: -2 strength, +2 dex, -2 constitution, and +2 charisma. I will take it. Ability score requirements: no minimum strength, maximum strength of 10, no minimum constitution, maximum constitution of 12, no minimum dex of 12, no max, minimum charisma of 12. They've got 15 feet walking speed and 30 feet flying speed, perfect flying ability. So ageless. Once fairies reach maturity, they do not display physical signs of aging. You also do not suffer from the negative or positive effects of aging on your ability scores. Distractible. Fairies struggle to use skills that require deep concentration. When you make a saving throw to maintain concentration, you have disadvantage. Your tendency to become distracted has a secondary effect that whenever combat begins, you are positioned beside a randomly determined ally. So you don't really know where you're going to be when combat begins. You don't position yourself when everybody's lining up. You've got to roll randomly. I think that's fun. Essence Sense. Fairies can read the essence auras of creatures and objects. Rules for Essence Sense can be found in magic and spells. Fairy magic. Fairies can naturally cast minor illusion and prestidigitation at will. Charisma is the spellcasting ability, and no spellcasting roll is required. Now remember, if you have watched the other video on spellcasting and the alternate spellcasting system here in Aetaltis that I really like, it means that if you're using that system ordinarily, arcane spellcasters do have to successfully complete a spellcasting roll, so that's not required here. Hopeful. Fairies easily recover from the effects of fear. If you fail a saving throw to resist fear, you may make a new saving throw at the start of each turn to shrug off the effect, whether or not the effect normally allows additional saving throws. If the effect allows additional saving throws, you have advantage. And then tiny. Fairy-sized equipment is expensive and difficult to find, but a fairy's size means they eat less food and drink less water. You are a tiny creature. Weapons and armor cost 4 times normal if made by a creature larger than tiny. Magic equipment is not automatically resized to fit you unless it was made for a tiny creature. You only need 1/4 of the food and water medium characters require. Potions and magical consumables still affect you normally. Then we get to the halfling, very classic as well. So halfling is present as well, +2 dex, +1 charisma, minimum charisma of 8. Halflings are especially susceptible to the effects of exhaustion due to hunger. Whenever the rules say you must take a level of exhaustion due to hunger, increase your exhaustion by an additional level. Low light vision. Halflings can see normally in conditions of low light. In dim conditions, you see out to 60 feet as if it were bright light. In dark conditions, you see out to 60 feet as if it were dim light, as long as there is some source of illumination. In complete darkness, you cannot see at all. I like the variation here between the lineages, as they call them, because it's better than just saying, hey, everything's got dark vision, everything's the same. I like the variation between the different lineages here. Lucky. Halflings can re-roll any failed saving throw, but they must accept the new result. Slip free. Halflings are hard to hold on to and can slip free from grapples. You have advantage on checks using dexterity acrobatics to escape a grapple or to free yourself from bonds. Sneaky. A lone halfling can move with such silence they are nearly undetectable and can find places to hide almost anywhere. When traveling alone, you may move without making a sound. Any checks to detect your sound when you are moving stealthily have disadvantage. In addition, you may always choose to hide as a bonus action. I love this incarnation of halflings. I would take it. Very classic. I would definitely take this incarnation of halflings. Now, what is this? As we were on the morning grind, we were looking at this book on the morning grind, which is the morning live stream, and this Newardian, This caught Inner Light's interest and was like, wait, what is that? I want to play this. And this does look so cool. Not something that you see in the standard D&D book. It's time to break out, perhaps, and get some more races or lineages to play. So this is the New Arden. I like it. So New Arden are tall and thin, averaging 6 feet in height and weighing 150 pounds. Compared to humans, their limbs are overly long in proportion to their torso. They have 3 fingers and an opposable thumb on each hand, and 4 toes on each foot. Their faces look vaguely human, but their features are subdued, almost to the point of non-existence. The exceptions are their eyes, which are overly large and solid black. New Arden of the noble caste sometimes have gold or silver flecks in their eyes. New Arden have hairless, smooth, pale skin, ranging from color from stark white to blue-gray. So it's like an alien race, of elders that exist on the world. I think it's really cool. So they get +3 intelligence and have a minimum intelligence of 12. Speed 30 feet, size medium. Analytical. New Arden have deeply analytical minds. They easily spot connections others miss and quickly spot logical patterns in the world around them. You have advantage on intelligence investigation checks. Complex mind. New Arden minds are highly complex and difficult to decipher. You have advantages on saving throws against mind-affecting spells and effects. Language mastery. New Arden are exceptional at learning new languages. You begin the game with the ability to speak, and if appropriate, read and write one additional language. Resilience. A New Arden's strange physiology makes them resistant to poisons and disease. You have advantage when making saving throws to resist the effects of poison or disease. Visualization. By meditating on a task, a New Arden can improve their chances of succeeding. If you are able to meditate undisturbed on a specific task for 1 minute, you may roll 1d4 and add the result to an ability check related to that task made immediately after the meditation period. I think that's pretty cool too. I would still personally play the fairy first, but this one is my second choice. I would definitely try playing one of these. It seems like fun. Something new, something fresh. So this is the Orog. So it's something like a troll or a half-troll. Huge, misshapen humanoid, standing over 9 feet tall and weighing 450 pounds. Have wide, downturned mouths, small, sunken eyes, and heavy brows. Their dark-colored hair is like hemp rope, growing in heavy patches all over their bodies. So they have +3 strength, +2 con, -2 intelligence, and -2 charisma. Looks like minimum strength of 13, minimum constitution of 13, but maximum intelligence of 10. So brave. It's very difficult to frighten an Orog. You have advantage on saving throws to resist fear effects. Dark Seed. Orogs are more susceptible to corruption by darkness than other races. You have disadvantage on any saving throw to resist corruption and the negative effects of corruption. Large. Orogs are large creatures. Weapons and armor cost 2 times as normal. Magic equipment does not automatically size to fit unless it was created for a large creature. You require twice as much food and water as a medium character. Potions and magical consumables affect you normally. Natural armor. An Orog's tough hide makes them difficult to harm. You gain +1 AC due to your naturally tough hide. This stacks with other armor. Pliable. Orogs are easily manipulated and vulnerable to mind-controlling magic. You have disadvantage on saving throws to resist mind-controlling magic and spells. Stability. Orogs are extremely difficult to push, shove, or trip. You have advantage on ability checks to resist shoves and trips, and on ability checks and saving throws to remain standing on unstable surfaces. Again, I like it. It seems like so much thought has been put into the characteristics of these different lineages. I really like it. Now look at this. Scytha. Am I saying that right? I hope I am. The Scytha. This crazy-looking reptile guy. I would definitely want to play one of these as well. So that would be number 3 on my list. I think 1 is definitely Fairy. Number 2 is the New Arden, but number 3 I think would definitely be one of these guys. Look at that guy. I mean, it's just cool. Fantastic art. Fantastic art. The Scytha's reptilian faces, strange physiques, and long tails set them apart from the other Aetaltin people. They stand 5 feet tall and weigh around 110 pounds. Their eyes are solid black. Scythian skin ranges in color from beige to mottled brown and has tough, pebble-like patterns. Scythas have clawed fingers and toes and powerful legs which they can leap great distances. Their prehensile tails are strong and allow enough fine control that some learn to use them like an extra arm and hand. +2 dex, +1 wisdom, minimum dex of 10. Scythas can leap 30 feet across or 15 feet up. That's nice, without a running start. Wow. Low light vision. Scythas can even see when there is little light. In dim conditions, you can see out to 60 feet as if it were bright light. I guess that's like the halfling here. In dark conditions, you can see out to 60 feet as if it were dim light, as long as there is some source of light. Starlight, for example. In complete darkness, you cannot see at all. Prehensile tail. Scythas have long, flexible tails they can use to carry and manipulate objects. You cannot naturally wield weapons with your tail, but you can retrieve small stowed objects carried on your person as a bonus action or carry a lightweight item such as a torch. If you take the tail fighter feat, you may also wield a weapon with your tail. Tail strike. Scythas can strike at foes using their tails. Your tail is considered a natural weapon with finesse that deals 1d4 damage and has a reach of 5 feet. Unique body shape. The unique shape of a Scytha's body, including the tail, makes it difficult for them to find properly sized clothing and armor outside of their homeland. Any wearable equipment costs twice as much as normal due to the alterations required, unless it is made by a craftsperson of the same body type. Equipment that is not properly altered is considered ill-fitting. Magical equipment still sizes itself to fit you normally. Okay. So this right here, we were wondering what that is. This is the sprite. Also kind of cool. I can see people wanting to play the sprite. See, I can see that if you I think that if you broke out this player's handbook at a table that had been playing the classic Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, or even Dungeons & Dragons for longer than 5th edition, and say, hey, we got some new stuff to play. I think a lot of players would be really excited about this. I really do. And, that's also why I am in favor of more short-term, single-shot, two-shot kinds of games, because not only is it easier to get people together for a one-shot or a two-shot, but also there are a lot of different kinds of things that I want to play. There are a lot of different kinds of characters that I want to play. And it's just not going to be possible for me to be able to play all of them if I got to go to level 20 on all of them. If every one of them is a campaign, that's going from 1 to 20, or supposed to be going 1 to 20 anyway. They don't all end up like that. Very few do. But if we said, hey, let's do some one-shots and do a whole bunch of one-shots every week. So if you can't make it a week, it's no problem. But, because you're just out that week and it's a one-shot, and then we just enjoy ourselves and we can play a variety of different stuff and have that fun and have the variety of adventures and playing the different kinds of characters we want to play. I would definitely be down for that. I'd probably play one of these too if I had the opportunity. So sprites are just under 4 feet tall and weigh 45 pounds. Their skin, hair, and eye color reflect the environment in which they were born. Most sprites have small horns or antlers. These bud when the sprite reaches maturity and grow to their full size within 3 years. Sprites reach maturity at the age of 10 and live up to 200 years. Let's see their traits. They're +2 dex, +1 wisdom, maximum strength of 14, dex minimum 14. Okay, once they reach maturity, sprites do not display physical signs of aging. They also do not suffer from the negative or positive effects of aging on your ability scores after reaching maturity. Animal friendship. Sprites have the innate power to befriend most beasts simply by talking to them. You can use your ability on undomesticated beasts that are herbivores or insectivores. The target must be within 30 feet, have intelligence 3 or lower, and must be able to see and hear you. The target creature must succeed on a DC 8 plus proficiency bonus plus charisma modifier wisdom saving throw. If it fails, it has the charmed condition when interacting with you for the next 24 hours. If you or one of your companions harms the target, the effect ends. You cannot affect more than one creature at a time with this ability. Domatophobia? I hope I'm saying that right. Domatophobia. Sprites grow despondent if they spend too much time in unnatural enclosed spaces. After every hour spent in an enclosed unnatural space, such as inside a house, castle, ship's cabin, or worked tunnel, you must make a DC 10 wisdom saving throw. If you fail, you suffer 1 level of exhaustion. All levels of exhaustion taken in this fashion are removed by taking a short rest in a natural space. Alright? Note that enclosed natural spaces, caverns, tree hollows, animal burrows, do not evoke this response and serve as a viable option for the short rest. Low light vision. Sprites can easily see in conditions of low light. In dim conditions, you can see out to 60 feet as if it were bright light. In dark conditions, you can see out to 60 feet as if it were dim light. As long as there is some source of light, starlight for example, in complete darkness, you cannot see at all. Speak with beasts. Sprites can communicate with wild creatures. Through sounds and gestures, you can communicate simple ideas with undomesticated herbivores or insectivores. Sprightly invisible. Once per short rest, you may turn invisible at will by holding your breath. Oh, that's cool. Anything you are wearing or carrying is invisible as long as it is on your person. The effect ends if you stop holding your breath, attack, cast a spell, take damage, must make a saving throw, or take any type of action that requires an ability check. I love these different races, lineages, whatever you're going to call them. The lineages I think are cool. Oh, look, more really cool art here as well. Those get me excited again. I mean, the classics are there, which is awesome, and they're kind of rethought. I think that the classic races as they're manifested here may be better than the ones in the 5th edition Player's Handbook. There's such classic elements about them, but then also there's new stuff to play that I think fits really well in a fantasy game, a classic fantasy tabletop game. Then we get into cultures, and I'm not going to get into the cultures here in detail because this is setting specific, but I do love the idea that we are separating the biological component from the cultural component, because traditionally, we end up with a whole bunch of sub-races, especially like in 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragons, where you have like dwarf and hill dwarf and this kind of dwarf and this kind of elf and stuff like that, because, originally, it was treating things kind of monolithically, that if you're an elf, then you're kind of monolithic from both a biological standpoint and a cultural standpoint. And then how they kind of got around that later as things started expanding was to say, well, maybe there are different kinds of sub-races, like the gray elves and, this type of elf and stuff like that, that sometimes also, often still doesn't exactly well capture the idea of the difference between the biology and the culture. So I think that rewriting it so that you've got that from the very beginning, it's the way I would do it, and it's the way that it's done here as well. So you have your biology taken care of by your lineage, but then in the world of Aetaltis, you also have these different cultures, which may have different lineages, different species, different races, whatever you're calling them, living within that culture. And of course, it talks about what particular lineages are most prominent or, whatever. But even though you may have different biological characteristics, you may share a lot of the same cultural characteristics. And actually, this book goes into a lot of detail about the cultural characteristics of different cultures. I mean, look at this kind of stuff that they talk about. Let me go back up here. So this is the kind of stuff that they do talk about. I'm not going to talk about the cultures for every one, but we've got a summary description of the culture. We've got an overview, geographic origins that includes geographic origins, lineages found among the members of this culture, the kind of government, language, dialect, literacy, patron and secondary inaros, those are the gods in this campaign setting, virtues and vices, values and aversions, favored and avoided cultures, cultures outside of their own that members of this culture are especially comfortable around or try to avoid. For cultures not listed here, assume the opinion is neutral. Public opinion, a generalized description of how members of other cultures perceive members of this culture. Manner, appearance, languages and literacy, art and music, food and drink, homes, virtues, vices, expanded discussion of that, expanded description of values and aversions, rights and responsibilities, tips about particular rights the members of this culture believe they are entitled to, and information about the responsibilities expected of a person of this culture, customs, names, religion, magic, adventurers, how the culture sees and deals with members becoming adventurers, unusual customs, traditions, and taboos, traits, tool proficiencies, languages, specializations, equipment, wealth dice, how much money are you starting with? A lot of detail. I love it. And I would like to say also before we leave here that the cultural description here suggests how someone of your culture typically behaves, but don't feel locked into these traits. You may choose to fully embody what people expect of someone from your culture in some ways, but in others you might be unusual. By defining what is normal for a culture and then thinking about how your personality fits or diverges from the norm unlocks a world of storytelling possibilities. For instance, if you are born an ice walker but you love to read books, how did that come about? What happened in your life to set you on a path so different from your friends and neighbors? Was this an unusual trait, the thing that inspired you to become an adventurer, or is it just one more thing in a long list of things that drove you to explore the world beyond your home? Of course, you don't have to be unusual, except for the adventuring part. Perhaps you are the embodiment of every stereotype, and by the Aerenanos, that's the gods, you're proud of it. Why shouldn't a Dalelander halfling take pride in their tradition of hospitality? And what Drothmal Ice Walker doesn't revel in the blessings of Droth? In the end, it's all up to you. I really like it. I got excited when I was going through this is the World of Aetaltis Player's Handbook. I really want to try playing out of it. I think that if I were to start a 5th edition game today, I would definitely pick up this one. I would want to play in it because I got characters I want to play. But also, if I were the dungeon master or the game master of a game, I think I would say, hey guys, we're playing a one-shot or a two-shot or something like that. let's create characters from this book. So I'm excited about it. Look at the magic system in another video, and also, hey, check out this book. Check out The World of Aetaltis. It's created by Mark Tassin. They did a great job. Do you want to try playing out of this book? Would you run a game with it, or would you play in a game with it? Let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear from you. I want to know what you think.